United being the preferred destination of Mason Mount if he leaves Chelsea. How likely do you feel this is to happen? And who else could be in the frame, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's right, Darren. My understanding is that Mason Mount is leaning towards joining Manchester United if Chelsea agree to sell him, and that talks are expected between the clubs in due course. Of course, they met at Old Trafford on Thursday night, so there may have been some dialogue between the hierarchies of both clubs on that occasion. We'll see if that materialises into offers and deep negotiations. Chelsea, of course, have had a problem over his contract, which expires next summer. They failed to reach an agreement for whatever reason. He's one of the lowest paid players at Stamford Bridge. They decided to park those talks until the end of the season. So the conversations will be picked up, no doubt, but a lot of water has gone under that bridge, excuse the pun, and so there'll be questions about whether Chelsea are going to manage to get this back on track.
Update there from David Ornstein on Mason Mount. We're going to delve into that story in a little bit more detail. We're also going to be looking at Man United's potential pursuit of Victor Osimhen, as David Ornstein has also stated that it's highly likely that Harry Kane may stay at Tottenham this summer, with the club demanding more than £100 million. Plus, coming from Germany, Thomas Tuchel could be about to be sacked today. That's the rumours coming out of Germany. Stay with us on the Done Deal show this morning. Hit the like and the share button. Let's do this. As we listened to at the top of the video, David Ornstein talking about the Mount situation. This is a player that divides such opinion in England. Such opinion. There are some Chelsea fans fuming that he is leaving. There are some Man United fans angry that he's being linked to the club. The one question I do have, and it doesn't mean managers are not wrong, but Klopp likes him, Arteta likes him, Tuchel likes him, Poch wants him, Ten Hag wants him. Is there a player in there that we're not? No one's really been able to answer that question for me. What are these managers seeing that we don't? And some people say it's his work rate, versatility. They want a good body like that in the dressing room. Cool. Why is that a bad thing? And it's not. I'm not even challenging it. I'm trying to understand it. There's a difference between challenge and seeking understanding. But it does appear that Mason Mount is on the verge of leaving Chelsea. There was the video footage yesterday of him kind of staring around Stamford Bridge. Maybe a little teary-eyed, maybe a little bit nostalgic, looking back over his, he grew up at the club. He made his, Chelsea debut. He's had some really good times at the club in the recent years, winning the Champions League as an example. But could he be about to leave? Where is he going to end up? The fact David Ornstein continually talks about him leaning towards Man United, as I have a lot of trust in David Ornstein's stories, that could be the case. What David Ornstein has also spoken about, which I think is very interesting, is Harry Kane. I want to quote what he said here. It's going to take a much, much higher fee than 100 million for Tottenham to even consider letting Harry Kane go. It's more likely that he stays this summer than he departs. More than 100 million pounds for Harry Kane. I read a separate report this morning that suggests 125 million pounds. That is the set price. 125 million pounds. Now, you all know how much I want Harry Kane. I rate this guy hugely. When you start moving towards those 120s, those 125s, the deal becomes less attractive. The deal has to be right. 125 million pounds. You're probably going to get... Look, Harry Kane just scored 30 league goals in one of the worst Tottenham teams in the past decade. This guy continually performs for club and country. No matter who the manager is, no matter what the style of play is, he will be a huge asset to Man United. Or potentially Chelsea, by the way, are also looking at this individual. But 125 million pounds. It's too much. I don't even have a reason to articulate I'm purely going on a gut feeling. I just think, is that a little bit too much money? And I say that because there's an article I read this morning that comes straight out of Italy that claims Man United are preparing a bid of around 130 million for the Napoli striker Victor Osimhen. Now, earlier on in the season, there was talk that you might be able to pick Harry Kane up for the 80 million pound mark. Go back, find the stories they were circulating. And I thought 80 million, 30 years old, Prem proven, one of the most consistent goal scorers in Europe. Victor Osimhen, younger, yes, you get more lifetime from him, but they were talking 130s, 140s, 150s. I felt Harry Kane was the better option in the short term because Man United, this notion of rebuilds and you don't have to win nothing for 3 or 4 years is crazy. Man United have to win while rebuilding. Some of your signings will be, and this is going to be our main centre back for the next 7, 8 years. This is going to be our new goalkeeper for the next decade. There will be other signings. Casemiro is one of them. Harry Kane could be another, which there for the next 3 to 4 years so that we can win whilst building. Fergie did that. All top managers do it. You don't just sign players who are at sort of at the beginning of their careers. You need to sign people at different stages to keep that balance right. But then you start to think you change the price suddenly, 130 million for Osimhen, 125 for Harry Kane. Does that change things? For me personally, it does slightly. I rate Victor Osimhen. I think he's a class striker. I still think 130 million might be a bit steep, but it's 2023. Gibbs White went for like 40 million pound. Man United might be getting 30 to 35 million for Scott McTominay. So maybe that's why the prices are rising so high. But I do want your take on this because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm in two minds here. I'm in two minds. I want Harry Kane, but when you start moving towards those 120s, too much. Away from all this news, though, this morning, is a very interesting story coming out of Germany. And I want to quote this correctly. So we have to be very, very mindful here. This has come from, you got to remember, Dortmund nearly won the league, and that is triggered Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have already sacked Oliver Kahn and some of their board. They won the league, but they've already sacked some of their board. The standards at that club are high. They make these changes early. They make these changes quickly because they never want to allow any rot to set in. You know, as we mentioned at Chelsea, it's one catastrophic year. You can turn that around really quickly. Some new board members, new decision makers, a new manager. Get rid of a bit of deadwood, 2 or 3 exciting players. Turn things around quickly. Just like in your house, you have a little bit of mold or rot, and you find it really early. You can cut it out, get it cleaned, never have to worry about it again. When you let rot set in and it spreads, it infects more, and then it becomes a bigger problem and a much bigger job. Cheap is expensive. So Oliver Kahn and co have already gone. Now, the former Bayern midfielder, Dima Hamann, has claimed that Thomas Tuchel will leave Bayern Munich today. They were only crowned champions on Saturday, but there is a belief that today, May 29th, he will be sacked. He will be sacked. And now, what we don't know is whether it's, he hasn't had a great start to life there. They almost threw the league away. So maybe it's just his management style. They're not really happy with the impact that he's made. Maybe it's because the people at board level they've sacked picked him, and they almost want a clean, fresh start for the new individuals that are going to come in to run the club. Or maybe a combination of the two. But the standards here are amazing. However, I know everybody wants their club to have these standards. But you've got to remember where Bayern Munich sits, not just in Germany, but in the overall pyramid of football. They are an impeccably well-run club. Now, that doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. This scenario would prove they make mistakes. But it's how quickly they act. They're at the peak of their powers domestically. Still one of the best teams in Europe. But they've had that drop-off in Europe, which is why I think there's this big shake-up. But they do it instantly rather than letting a problem set in. Because if you let the problem set in and go on for 10 years, and then you fall from grace, you come in 3rd and 4th in your league, 5th in your league, never competing in the Champions League, half the time not getting into it. You can have those high standards, but there has to be a process of rebuilding your team back up to the level they sit at now. And this is what I always say to people, have high standards, but look at the context and the situation that you sit in. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bayern Munich do this, because that is how you maintain those standards when you are at the top. It isn't just it's not going out. It's about being uncompetitive. It's about problems that might be going on behind the scenes. Often there's things that we're not privy to. And of course, in Germany, you can afford for those standards to be even higher because it's a complete monopoly by Bayern Munich. Nobody can compete with them financially. The pyramid is pretty much set up to make them better. The pyramid of their football system is set up to make them better. So I'm not surprised. But we'll wait and see what happens with this news. It's one of those stories where I read it this morning and thought, I know it's a claim from an ex-player, and maybe he knows something that we don't. Fabrizio has actually tweeted about it very recently when I'm recording this. There's sources deny changes or thoughts of Thomas Tuchel leaving Bayern after this dismissal of Kane, after the rumours, Tuchel waiting for the Rector situation to be clarified, but still 100% involved. So some of you will be triggered because my title is going to mention Tuchel sacked with a question mark, and you'll cry like babies. But let's see what happens. It's an intriguing one to keep an eye on. It's an intriguing one to keep an eye on, whether they stick with him or not. We'll see. Listen, everyone, hit the like and the share button. Subscribe to the Terrace. Back this afternoon with more content for you. Take care. Goodbye.